And before we start wrapping up towards the end, I do have another quick encounter that a lot of people might find fascinating. So there was one day during the whole pandemic thing that I was at Myers, and this was when I first started my podcast. So, I was just Among Us, like all this kind of shit, just ranting and raving about stuff in public at that time. And I'm ranting and raving about reptilians, right? And talking about how like this crazy batshit conversation you could possibly imagine was that I was doing in the middle of Myers with my girl, with Gabby. And so in the middle of this conversation, she's ringing stuff out. We're in the self scan, and I look back, and there's this lady who looks at me, and she pulls her COVID mask down, and her face changes to this like reptilian looking face. And then she pulls it back up and turns and just continues talking to the person that she was with. And I took that as a sign of, we're here, shut your fucking mouth. And I got a picture, not of that exact one, but just kind of like a rough idea kind of like of what I saw as far as like the visuals of this face. Oh, one last Wendigo picture for you guys if you guys want to see another one. But going into the reptilian thing, so it was like this. It was like an overlay over a normal person's face, and it changed just for a second and went back. It wasn't like the standard full reptile face. It was more like an imprint over the face. So kind of my theory after having this experience is a lot of people want to imagine like the reptilians, like they're like a race that like shapeshifts and does all this shit. I don't think they're necessarily shapeshifting. I think what they do is that they are their form, and then they project an image of what they want you to see on top of their form, because everybody knows that the human mind can be easily manipulated. Your perception can be easily manipulated. And I think that what she did is temporarily let her guard down to basically tell me to shut the fuck up, and then went back to her form. But I think that these things exist in their full reptilian form everywhere, but they just project an image of a human on you so that that's what you see, even though that is not their form. So they're not shape-shifting. They're using some type of telekinetic ability to make you see what they want you to see.
But that kind of gets back to stuff we talk about all the time as far as like, Bigfoot or aliens or whatever, presenting themselves in a different mask or, whatever you want to call it. So, I mean, that's very in line with that line of thinking. And what if whatever these reptilian beings are, ultra terrestrials, whatever you want to call them, are kind of responsible for a lot of this paranormal activity? And it's just exactly like you said, them presenting themselves in different masks.
I know that I've said the whole thing with orbs, how I think that the orbs could be like the beings and that they actually like change into other forms of things. I mean, the same could be said with these. There could be orbs that are doing that, and then there could be reptilians that are doing that. And they could completely change their form to scare somebody away from a specific location or just for fun. I mean, realistically, these things they say are partly energy vampires. So part of the energy that you'd want to assumably absorb would be fear. So, if people are camping in the middle of the woods and you need a quick energy meal, what not a better way to do it than to, look like a Sasquatch or like a dog man and just walk past this fucking camp. Yep. And it's almost like that instilled fear of like the old scary movies where it's like, it's scarier if you don't see it, like they could full blown attack, but if they just do a simple walk past and don't interact or engage, that's almost freakier than if they just came into the place and did it. Because then rather than having that initial fear, you taking off and being done and over with, if you stay that night, it's like a whole night that these things can just drain energy from you because you still have that high state of fear if you're not leaving.
Well, and something that just popped into my head while you were talking about that, I know in part 3 of Jack Parsons, when we were talking about the Collins Elite, I talked about some of the miscellaneous Collins Elite notes. And I can't remember if I talked about this specifically, but if I didn't, so there's kind of this idea in the Nick Redfern book about how these, demonic creatures that he thinks are the the Collins Elite rather thinks are the extraterrestrials. There's this idea that they can only kind of interfere with you and in our reality as much as people believe in them. So I wonder if, maybe whatever these reptilian, we talk about all the time, we're all talking about the same thing. It's just issues of language. What if, these quote unquote demons and reptilians and greys and whatever, we're all talking about the same thing. It's just, what we choose to believe and how they choose to interact with us.
I mean, they could even change their image through time depending on like what the high fear of that time is. So like if they're around during like biblical times, maybe they projected themselves as like giants or Nephilim or whatever. And then, more modern day, everybody's into the whole UFO thing. So they project themselves as aliens and different things like that. And then back in the early 1900s, everybody was into spirituality. So they project themselves as ghosts and apparitions at the time. Like, I mean, just there's a lot of possibilities out there. I mean, anything could definitely be possible, but unfortunately, all we can do here is theorize about it until maybe one day we can actually get a reptilian just to sit down on the show and talk about their experiences of being a reptilian. But if they don't have their filter up, it may just come out as
That was pretty good. I'm thoroughly impressed. But
that was off the top of my hat too, my friend.
That was
that was probably like, fuck you, let's fight in reptilian. So I probably pissed off all of our reptilian listeners out there.
Well, I mean, the feds already came for you twice, so I mean.